All right, so you already know it's Someone TV Media Briefings, and we've been covering a lot of different things as far as subject matter, cases, and like I said, today we're going to start hitting things with a hammer and a nail because I think we've given people enough of the briefings. Um, just to start off, like, mm, I guess we'll start off with the license because I think that's an issue that everybody seems to kind of have an issue with. What we need to understand when you enter in the courtroom, and what I'm gonna do is I don't just want to put out the information without the action supporting what the things that I'm saying. So I'm gonna be calling on some of my people and some of you guys out there to come into the courtroom and watch some of these things take place. About 15 to 20 witnesses, so that people can actually start realizing what the movement really represents. And I keep telling people it represents the action phase of what we've always tried to accomplish, and it's here. And just getting back to the license thing, like I was just saying a second ago, it's no way that okay, so they say, oh, well, you need a license to drive, and you do not need a license to drive. And it doesn't matter if you're saying motor vehicle, traveler. I mean, you can get to the technical aspect of it, but that's not really what's putting you in a jurisdiction to make you conform to a statute code that says you are required to have a license. The Constitution was actually formed so that the inalienable rights of the people, any human being, would be secured by the government. So the government's job is to secure the inalienable rights so that when people do, because people are like, well, what if someone violates those laws, and then if ever there's no police, then who's going to govern? And if there's no structure, what are the people going to do? Well, the the people agreed to stay sovereign in all capacity. The state cannot exist without the people because it is the people that give the state its power. You see what I'm saying? And just because the state acts as a security force to secure those rights between when two different parties have disagreements, that doesn't mean that they can, if you're not a part of paying their security forces, or you're not a part of their security force organization structure, that they're not responsible or obligated to protect your inalienable rights. Because if somebody comes over here, it's like when we go overseas and we go to some of these other countries and we have the embassies and places, and some of the places we don't. But we have troops so many places and so many different connections here. Well, I hate to say we, but the United States does. So as citizens, when you travel abroad into the other nations, if something happens to you in that country, you still have your rights. You see what I'm saying? And what ends up happening is the government of your jurisdiction would have to come in and fight for those rights when you're outside of its jurisdictional borders. But um, within the borders of your own country, respective country, you always have your inalienable rights because they are a part of your nature. It is part of what has been endowed in us by our Creator, that we have these rights. So it's nothing that can establish the rights. It's nothing that can re-give us permission or try to turn an inalienable right into a permission unless we consent to it. And I think that's what we don't understand what's going on. To get back to what I'm saying about the license, an inalienable right to uh, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is not the Constitution. These are universal truths that exist worldwide. So when a lot of people try to use the Constitution as a basis to say that, hey, well, well, you have to have a license because the Constitution does not require that. If you want to speak from a U.S. citizen's aspect, but a citizen has well, see, it's a lot of things change with the citizenship, and I think that's what people are not understanding. With what happened to the sovereign power of the people over the years, the people have been consenting to giving their rights up, and you have to reassert yourself. So I don't care if you don't have a license. And there's no state, the state of Illinois, the state of California, the state of Washington, the state of New York, the state of Florida, Texas. We can keep going on and on. The state cannot say that you are required to have a license based on their statutes when it is unconstitutional for them to exceed their jurisdiction by violating your inalienable rights. That's it. Not your constitutional rights, your inalienable rights. You see what I'm saying here? And people are like, well, that's not gonna work. That if I tell the judge that, well, what you do is you go and cite the sources where there's evidence to support these facts, like the Supreme Court, who ruled that we would be able to travel as freely upon the highways as long as we are not engaged in commerce. Now, if you are engaged in commerce, then a license is required because you are using the public highways for profit that you're generating for whether it's a corporation or for yourself. You see what I'm saying here? And that's what we're trying to distinguish for the people as a whole. If we don't do that, if we don't distinguish between what is allowed and what is not allowed and what is lawful and what is not lawful, then we'll never get an understanding of what's supposed to be going on in this world. People will always be running around in circles because the system is designed like that until we address it in its proper fashion. And if you're riding with no seatbelt or they say you're doing 55 miles per hour, the thing is, it's all about an injury. The state of, let's say the state of New York cannot claim an injury if, I'm going to say the state of New York, the state of Minnesota cannot claim an injury. Like, for instance, we pulled you over. John Smith was doing 55. He didn't have his seatbelt. Okay, officer or whoever, you're not even an officer at this point. They're policy enforcers. They enforce the policy. They're no longer peace officers. They're enforcing the policy of the state, not the law, the policies of the state corporation. You see what I'm saying? There's a big difference. McDonald's law, you're not subject to McDonald's laws as a McDonald's if you're not a McDonald's employee, but if you're working for McDonald's and when you're within the confines and restrictions and jurisdiction of the McDonald's company, you're subject to the bylaws that the corporation sets up. Outside of that, in your private world, you're not subject to none of these things. And the same applies to the citizenship and how it is the government is a corporation, because you can look up and they say under the 721 Code of Federal Regulations, it states that all crimes are commercial. Murder, rape, possession, drug, all of that. So that means the banks, I mean, not the banks, but really the banks, the courts are here to kind of contract that and get you to consent to it so that they can make the money off of it. Like most of the cases, like you're talking about, a lot of times they want to hurry up and get the plea done because I think they have the bonds expire in like 90 days or something along those lines. Don't quote me on it, but I know it's like around 90 days that they do expire. I think it's after the plea. I'm gonna have to get back into my notes and actually get that quoted exactly before I go forward with that particular point. But I will go back to what I'm saying about the licenses and the permissions and the state of Minnesota saying, well, I deserve a ticket because I didn't have the proper permission to to exercise my inalienable rights, not my constitutional rights. You see what I'm saying? And if the state of Minnesota is claiming some injury, well, the state of Minnesota has claimed the state of Georgia wants to file a claim. Well, you're not going to file a claim against me because you have to assert yourself and let them know off the bat. If the state of Minnesota is telling me that the legal name has caused it damages, has caused the state injury, then the state must appear on the face of the record as a competent witness and testify under oath to these things and these claims. And the state can't do that. And you say, well, the prosecution is the state. Well, if the prosecution is the state and the judge is also a part of the state, and the prosecution represents the state, which is a party to the case, then this is a conflict of interest. This needs to be transferred to federal court. We need to change venues because this is not the proper jurisdiction. But more importantly, the states, before the court can even proceed, because subject matter jurisdiction, I hope I'm not jumping around too much for you guys, but the court has to have subject matter jurisdiction. And if the state is claiming that I went 45 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour zone, I didn't have my seatbelt on, they're going to have to show that they were injured. How did me doing 45 miles per hour injure them? How did me not wearing a seatbelt injure them? And they'll say, well, this is for public safety and safety. No, these are landmines so that when the people come out of their house, they are somehow offending some kind of copyright statute, fake wannabe law, so that it generates revenue for the state. Because the seatbelt law has not deterred people from the same safety that the law claims to secure for the people due to the law existing. That doesn't happen. Me speeding doesn't injure no one until I'm injured. And then if there's an injured party, then of course hold me accountable and hold me liable. But don't stand up on the stand and tell me that possession with an intent to deliver or possession is injuring who? And without that, when we challenge the subject matter jurisdiction, knowing that the prosecution in the state represent the state, it's a conflict of interest for one. They cannot get on the record and allow me to examine the so-called state. And then the state has not shown no injuries and no damages that have been incurred on my behalf to hold me liable for such a claim. So I would like a counterclaim because because they have violated my inalienable rights. They have, and if they've taken your car, they've unlawfully taken your property, and they've actually committed kidnapping. You see what I'm saying? When you're taken to jail and thrown in a box, that's no different than me saying, all right, check here. This is how it's going to go. I seen you doing something I don't like. I'm going to lock you up here in the backyard with these kennels that I got in my backyard until you pay me some money. That's kidnapping. When anybody else does it, they call it kidnapping. So what is the difference? How come we consent to our government doing the same things that we resent other people doing to us? Then it cannot be a compassion for humans as a whole. Then there has to be some kind of discrimination going on. And there's no impartiality on behalf of anyone if we're stating any facts like that. And no one is standing on universal principles if you believe in any concept that is supportive of that. Some on TV media, man. You know, I told you we're going to break these into two parts so that everybody gets everything. So you already know what time it is, and we'll make sure we do how we're supposed to do. AP.